What's up, Modern Contractor TV? Teddy here. In this episode, we sit down with Patrick Lang. Patrick is a business broker, but he specializes in one industry, HVAC, and he does a little bit of plumbing, but he is the expert. If you want to sell your HVAC company or even just find out what is your business worth, are you operating an HVAC company right now and you're just thinking, I wish I knew what my company's worth? Patrick offers free evaluations on his website. He will give you a ballpark estimate on what your company could sell for. And in this episode, we dive into how do you build the value of your business? How do you make it more appealing for buyers? What are buyers looking for? And we really hone in on the HVAC industry because that's what he specializes in. So if that's you, and even if you're just in home services and you want to know how a business broker thinks and what it sounds like to speak to a business broker about building the value of your business, I think you'll get a lot of value out of this episode. So let's get into it.
You're listening to Modern Contractor TV, the show for home service pros who want to build real business value, scale profits, and create a company that doesn't rely on them day to day. Hosted by entrepreneur, author, and advisor Teddy Slack, a builder of multiple seven-figure service businesses. Each episode brings you real-world strategies to help you grow, systemize, and prepare for a profitable exit. Let's get into it.
All righty. What's going on, Patrick? Welcome to Modern Contractor TV.
Thank you so much for having me, Teddy. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on and learn all about selling HVAC companies because this is an industry that I know a little bit about, but not nearly as much as you. You sound like you have all the expertise, which is awesome when it comes to business brokerage, when you can niche down like you have. And I'm really interested to learn about this. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and a little bit about your background and how you got into this very niche brokerage business?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of a long road to get here, I guess. It didn't start here. So I'm a business broker. I specialize in the sale of heating and air companies, heating and air and plumbing companies, really nationwide. Over the last 6 years, as of last week, we've sold 146. So we've been fortunate to be part of a lot of transactions. And I'm learning every day, right? Every deal is a little different. Every business is a little different. I was a broker that sold everything: bars, restaurants, gas stations, flower shops, you name it, I sold it. I listed a heating and air company for sale. I liked the industry, and so I bought it. So bought a heating and air company, slowed down my business brokerage, ran that company for a couple of years, and I missed the business brokerage world. So I decided I was going to sell my heating and air company and go back and focus on business brokerage. And when I did, we were a small company, under $2 million in sales. I couldn't find a lot of information on it. And I thought, wow, as a broker, if I can't find information, what's the contractor who's been fixing air conditioners for 20 years going to do to find information? You know, if you're doing $20 million, people were lining up to help you, but doing $1.5 million, there wasn't really any accurate information out there. So at that time, I switched my business from doing everything to just heating and air. Actually, my son and daughter-in-law bought my business from me, so they run it today. For the first probably 5 years, my office was inside of their office. So I was around the industry all day, every day still. Even though I wasn't there running it, I was still kind of engrossed in the industry just by being in the same building. And that's when we made the switch. I'm based in Florida. And so the first year, probably first 6 months to a year, I just sold businesses in Florida. Then I got one in Georgia, then the Carolinas. And then COVID hit, and COVID was actually very good for my business. I was able to fly nationwide for pennies on the dollar, right? I could fly from Gainesville, Florida to LA round trip for like $250. I was the only guy on the plane. Every seat was first class. There was nobody in the hotels. Every rent-a-car was almost free. So it was a good time for me to expand, and we expanded nationwide, and we have been blessed ever since to be able to help quite a few people in the process.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah, that's awesome that you're able to see clients all over the country. I mean, do you do a lot of in-person meetings or do you do a lot of it over Zoom as well? I mean, what are you typically seeing?
So a little bit of everything. I leave it up to the client, right? If I say, hey, if you want to meet, I'll fly there. I was in Chicago yesterday. And so I, unfortunately, I live on an airplane, it seems. I travel a ton. And some people are fine, doing a Zoom meeting. I have some sellers I've never met in person, never been to their location. I have others that I'm at every meeting. I'm there for the due diligence process. I'm there for closing. It really, I leave it up to them whatever they feel comfortable. The reality is, for most people, selling their business is the biggest sale of their life.
Yep.
And for most of them, they've never done it. And so I'm good with whatever they're good with, right? If they want me there every time, I'll fly there every week. And if they don't need me there and we're good doing Zoom meetings, I'm good with that. So I leave the ball in their court. But as a result, I do travel a lot.
Yeah. You said, to go back a little bit in the beginning, you said that you went into the HVAC business yourself, but then you missed the brokerage. So what did you miss exactly about the brokerage business itself that kind of pulled you back into the industry?
I love business, and I love what people are doing to be successful. And I love learning what's not working, especially in the trades, right? It's a blue collar business. Most of my clients are just good people that 20 years ago didn't like their boss and got their license and started their business, and through pure hard work and taking care of people, they built something special. Support every little league team for the last 20 years. They're pillars in their community. I love that. And I love peeling the curtain back and seeing how they did it. Really, most of them starting with nothing, right? Yep. They just kind of had a dream or angry at their boss, and they started it, and here we are today. And so I love that aspect of the business, and I get to help a lot of people. And I mean, let's not sugarcoat it. I get paid to do it, right? So at the end of the day, it's a financial transaction for everyone, myself included, but I get to work with some great people and see a lot of great ideas and a lot of great things happening, and then what doesn't work. So a combination of all that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. I mean, and learning about, the different industries and, and how they operate is really cool, right? To see, some businesses are very intricate, right? They're very difficult sometimes with operational wise to get them going. And then others have a little bit of a simpler business model. I mean, they all have their nuances and their ups and downs, but some of them, it's like, I mean, I know for me, in my environmental business, well, I didn't know any better because I grew up in that industry, but I didn't realize how difficult it was to operate because of special licenses you needed. You're dealing with different state agencies and reporting and different labs and disposals. And then I started consulting on some other businesses, different industries. And I was like, wow, this is a lot less cumbersome as far as all the intricacies. So can you talk a little bit about that with what brought you really focus on the HVAC industry and plumbing and why you kind of honed in on it? What did you see in that industry that you really liked?
No, I think part of it is, once again, me owning one, right? So I bought it and I've kind of been in their shoes. I've owned multiple businesses over the years, different industries. But I really kind of fit in with the blue collar kind of people, and that's kind of my lifestyle. And so that helped, and I thought I saw a need, right? There's all these, especially now. I didn't know it at the time, but there's all these buyers coming to the marketplace, and many of these are professional buyers, right? That's all they do all day, every day is buy businesses, and they know so much about it, and these sellers are not equipped for it.
Yep.
Right? Really, and I sell a lot of smaller companies, and you and I have talked about that previously. I sell a lot of companies $1.5 million in sales to $5 million in sales. And part of the reason is that guy or girl, doing $2 million in sales probably doesn't know much about a business sale, right? They really need my help. And yep. So those people are appreciative of my help. If somebody's doing $20 million in sales, they're probably a pretty sharp business person. I mean, I can help them in a transaction, but they don't need me necessarily to market their business and sift through buyers and help them on the entire transaction, where that smaller person, in my opinion, really does. And so I think that's where I gravitated. One, the experience. One, I understood the industry. One, I both bought and sold a heating and air company. So there was a lot to resonate with. And so I think that really helped draw me into that area. And then it just kind of took off a life of its own, really.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, the fact that you owned that business, I mean, it's for me too. Like, I was in that industry. It was a very small industry. I mean, obviously HVAC is a lot bigger industry, but I mean, there's a lot of them to potentially sell. So like you said, I mean, you're selling hundreds of businesses. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. And you probably see the inner workings of, a lot of the operations are the same, but people do it differently, right? So some of the processes they may follow are differently, even just the way they do reporting, right, with their P&Ls and stuff like that. So maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, what are you seeing once you opening up the books of these businesses when they're coming to you and they're saying, hey, I want to sell my business. Here's my books. I mean, you probably see everything from like companies that have no books, right? They're like all the way to guys that are, have it really dialed in. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how that affects the valuation of the businesses too,
Great point. So it's crazy. So I've sold companies to people who have no heating and air experience, and they've done incredible jobs running the business. They couldn't tell you the difference between a capacitor and a contactor, and they don't need to, right? They surround themselves with the people on the technical side, and they're great business people. I also have sold businesses of people who won't get out of the van, right? It's a husband and wife team, and the wife often does the books, and the husband doesn't know anything about a computer, and everything's still on paper, and comes back to the office and gets dispatched, and they don't use any CRM system. So I see a wide gamut of it. The amazing part, or the exciting, I guess, part to me is I've seen success on both ends of the spectrum as well, right? I've seen people who are so outdated and could have incredible businesses, that they have great businesses, but they could be 10 times the size because they won't get out of their own way. They're going to do it their way, and that's the way they their business, and that's the way they want it run, and they're not going to change. And so for those people, it's great, right? I mean, it does what they want it to do. So I see a little bit of everything, which to me is pretty exciting. But you're absolutely correct. Value is dictated by the business they built. And so the ones that have clean books and records and track everything and are easy, we could bring a buyer in and either give them the CRM system or give them their P&Ls or give them access to their QuickBooks, and man, they could see everything instantly. It often commands a premium. If we have to give somebody a shoebox for due diligence and say, hey, sift and sort through all of this and good luck finding it out, that changes the valuation.
100%. I mean, I seen it in my own personal life because the way I ran my business before, it was the same way. I just learned old school. So I didn't know, and certain things that are being run through the business, there's other companies that are intertwined with the one company. And it's like, and how do you decipher these numbers? Like, where's the true profit of this business? And I would back then, I was like, well, I could take these numbers, I'll put in an Excel sheet and I'll explain it all to you. The broker's like, no, you can't. Like, you can do that, but like the buyers are not going to be okay with that. And the bank is going to have an issue if they're trying to get an SBA loan. So that's when I learned, like, all right, I got to clean my books up. And my last business, we kept it so squeaky clean. When the broker came, we were shooting them over so fast. They were like, I've never seen a company your size getting, documents this quick, and everything was set up and it made a difference for sure. I mean, the bank loved us when we went for the loan. The buyer came for the loan. It was really a good way to have the business set up. And I talk to my clients about that all the time. So I'm sure you probably run into that. Now, are there times where you're like, hey, the way the business is set up, it's just not sellable? Like, did you run into that too, or you have to literally tell people, it's not even, I can't put it on the market because the way it's set up?
Hardest part of my job. I have a YouTube channel and I have a video on there, one of my most watched videos, and the video is your baby's ugly. Because I have to sit down with people, and for most people, the business is their baby, right?
Yes, 100%.
Their entire life building it, and I have to sit down with them and say, hey, you've done it all wrong for the last 30 years. Nobody's going to pay you for this. And it'll rip your heart out. If you do it to somebody who's 40 years old, well, heck, go back and fix it. Here's what they're looking for. Go do that. You do it with somebody who's 70 and they've run out of gas, right? And it's horrible. And so that's why I do podcasts like this. That's why we write articles. That's why we have the videos, because most people don't know who to ask, right? They've been head down in their business, working. They may attend a trade show. They may go to an event, and they may hear, hey, somebody's paying X amount of dollars for businesses. They think that's what their business is worth. And that's what they go on. That's their, now, okay, my business is worth $2 million or 10 million or 2 million, whatever that is. And they just think that. And then they wait and they come to me and I say, no, it's not. It's not worth anything. And it's horrible. And so we do things like this. We speak at events, we write articles, trade shows, all the stuff we do to say, get a valuation done in your business. And that's the biggest thing. If nobody gets anything out of this podcast today, at least hope they get a valuation done so you know where you stand. And that's for the person who's 30 just starting out, or the person who's 70 looking to be done. Yep. Because it's so much easier you talk about, the tale of two businesses like you did with yours. If you come to me and I can hand somebody your tax return and say, hey, there's their business, the multiple we're able to get is so much substantially higher, and the deal goes so much smoother than if I have to say, here's a spreadsheet of all the ad packs.
Yes.
Here's what they're really making. Here's what they're paying on the side. Here's the cash business. We do all that. We're not able to command a premium, and sometimes not even able to sell it at all. And so many people, when I talk to them, we'll do an initial phone call and I'll say, tell me about your business. Oh, we're doing $3 million or $2 million in sales. Great. You're making $300,000 a year. Yeah, that sounds right. Oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. Great. Send me your tax returns. Let's talk about it. They send me their tax returns. The tax return shows $1 million in sales because they've been hiding $1 million of it. It shows they're losing money and they have the last 5 years. And I call them and say, hey, I thought you were making $300,000 a year. Well, I am. I know, but your tax return says you're losing. Well, every business does that. Well, you can't get paid for what you can't prove, right? At the end of the day, if I'm a buyer and you're cheating the federal government, risking going to jail, how am I going to feel comfortable that you're telling me the truth when I have no recourse for you? And like you said, banking, a lot of deals we do are SBA financed. Well, we can't go to the federal government and say, hey,
back
really
this loan
a bunch more. Here's a list of how he's been cheating you, and please loan the money on it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. That's exactly it. I mean, the people don't realize that, yes, you can play that game, and most smaller, I would say, business owners play that game, right? They want to hide the taxes. I mean, I have some clients that are even 7-8 million top line revenue. They play that game. They want to hide all the taxes at the end of the year. I'm like, buying equipment, they're spending all the money to drive down their profits. I'm like, listen, this is a game that, you got to stop playing. If you want to build for value purposes, you have to pay taxes. Like, that should be your number one KPI for value purposes. How much did you pay in taxes? Great. Well, you're going to get a multiple of that when you go to sell. And if you got 3 years of clean books like that, it really does command a higher value. And yes, you get a higher multiple. I mean, I got a 5X from my company when most companies of my size are trading at 3 to 3.5 times. So, you do the multiplication on that, at $1.6 million in profit, you're talking, $3.5 million extra because I set it up properly. It's a big number. It's not a small number. So you have to sometimes bite the bullet if you know yourself. I think probably a lot of times you run into this is most business owners don't even really ever think about selling until it's like, you know what? I'm done. Let me just put this thing on the market like it's a house or something, and you're just going to go throw it on the market, right? So you want to talk a little bit about that? You probably come across that, right? That's what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. On all your points there. So the first thing is building a business to sell and running a business to save taxes on are two completely different businesses.
Yep.
Right. At the end of the day, if the ultimate goal is to maximize value, hiding all your income is not the answer. And put math to it. Let's use, you said a 5-time multiple. Well, if you've been hiding $50,000 of income, use that as an example, that's $250,000 that you would have not gotten because you couldn't prove that money. And you would have saved, a couple $1,000s a year in taxes. So, I mean, the math never works out. Back to the other part of the comment, though, about people, don't do anything and then, okay, now I'm ready to sell. Too often, and for the last year, I don't know why it's happened a few times, people die, right? At the end of the day, or get diagnosed with something horrible, and now it's too late to fix it, right? They don't have an option. I've had 3 spouses call me and say, hey, my husband just died. He was going to call you before. Can we sell his business? And the answer typically ends up being no. Or not.
Because
that's the extreme side of it. But let's take a normal business owner. They're ready for retirement. They call me and they're ready to go next year. And they've been creative with their accounting, we'll say. Instead of cheating on their taxes, they've been creative with their accounting. In that scenario, I look at the books and I say, hey, a buyer's going to look back typically 3 years. So are you wanting to work 3 more years to get these numbers cleaned up so you can get the price you're looking for? Or are you willing to take a lesser amount? And typically what we see happen is they just take less.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm done. I'm worn out.
Yep.
I'm worried about the new refrigerant. I'm worried about getting employees. I'm worried about this and that. I just want to walk away. And they leave lots of money on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate because they're not doing the homework. And I tell my audience this all the time. You guys have to educate yourself. It's not, listen, you could listen to podcasts like this. There's plenty of podcasts out there about exiting and building the value of your business. There's plenty of books you can read. And that's what I did. That's what changed my world when I started to learn about this stuff, because it's like, holy shit, like this is a whole nother way to operate a business. Even getting myself out of the day to day. Once I learned that was like the number one driver, I'm like, okay, this is something I have to like put a lot of effort and time into. And once I got myself out of the day to day and the business didn't depend on me, I actually fell back in love with my business again. And I was like, wow, maybe I don't want to sell this. This is actually pretty nice. I got a business that's just churning profit. I don't need to be there. Like if I don't show up, the sales calls happen and, you know, all the operations are happening in the back end. So once you guys start educating yourself about this stuff, you'll not only build a value business, but you'll build a business that you'll start to fall in love with again. And then you could, you know, come to a guy like Patrick and you'd be ready to sell and get that highest multiple possible, you know?
Well, and that's running a business that somebody wants to buy is completely different, right? If you look at what buyers are looking for and build your business around that, you're right. You wouldn't want to sell. Why would you?
Yep.
Printing money, it doesn't rely on you 24 hours a day. You've got well-trained staff. You've got marketing dialed in. You've got all these things happening. Then the beauty becomes when you're ready to sell, now you can command a premium because one, you don't have to sell. Two, more buyers are going to be interested in the business and help create competition. It's a better way to be. And it definitely helps in the process, helps me in the process, certainly.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, makes your job way easier when it's set up properly. And then what are you seeing as far as the buyers? I mean, from the buyer's perspective, I'm sure there's a gamut of buyers depending on the type of buyer they are, if they're strategic or financial, you know, maybe it's even a competitor or whatever the type of buyer they are. But like, what are you seeing the biggest thing is that they're mainly looking for? Is it like just higher amounts of profit, or is it the way the operations are set up? Like, what do you think is one of the biggest factors they look for?
Yeah, you know, it really depends on who the buyer is.
Yeah.
Kind of dictates that. At the end of the day, it's money, right? I mean, they're looking for a business that generates a certain amount of gross sales
Yep.
and a certain amount of net income. And so that's going to be the first measuring stick. Then from there, it's going to be operational quality, right? I mean, if they look up your Google review and your name's the business is Black Heating and Air, and every Google review says what a great job Teddy did when he was at my house, well, they're going to be concerned, right?
Yeah.
They want to see people and processes and systems in place, knowing that when you walk out the door, the business can continue. And accuracy of data, right? How much data are you tracking? You know, do you know your numbers? Do you know the customer's numbers from an equipment standpoint? What are you tracking? All that type of stuff. They're looking for that. That's certainly helpful in the process as well. But at the end of the day, it is a financial transaction, and financials are typically going to be at the top of that.
Yeah. And are you seeing a lot of guys, you mentioned before that you have buyers that are coming in that have no industry experience, but they're, you know, maybe they're coming from corporate, or maybe, you know, maybe somebody retired, maybe they sold another business, but they're coming into the HVAC space. Are you seeing a lot of that?
Yeah, tons. Yeah, I think we did 24 deals last year or so, 23 deals. And I would venture to guess a third of them or more had no industry experience, and may be closer to half, where they may have worked for a private equity company that had bought some heating and air companies, and now they want to do the same thing on their own.
Yep.
Or their family had a heating and air company and now they want to get into it, or all sorts of reasons. But yeah, a lot of buyers we work with have no industry experience.
Now, are they aligning themselves with like an industry expert, like a coach, so to speak, in that industry when they're coming in? Do you see that, or you're not really seeing that part of it because you're not involved after the sale, I guess, right?
So some, yes. A lot of them will join best practice groups.
Yep.
And so they're getting knowledge there. A lot of them will team up with an operator.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll either, through the business they acquire, promote somebody or keep somebody on that's a good kind of GM position, and then maybe elevate them from an operational standpoint if they end up buying multiple locations, or they'll specifically hire that person to come in and be part of that team as the operator. So we see they're not learning the trade, right? At the end of the day, that their intention has never been to learn the trade. It's to bring in an operator, whether it's promote from within. I have a lot of these buyers that we've talked about that have bought 4 and 5 locations from me.
Wow.
And they may have bought 2 from me and 2 other ones, but you know, they've bought multiple locations, and it's typically aligning with some sort of operator that they have faith and trust in.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's, I'm actually looking into the roofing industry right now pretty heavily. I'm very close to making a decision on bootstrapping a brand new roofing residential retail, no insurance, but same thing. I don't have the industry experience, but I have the contacts to go out there, find the right people to put in the right, places that are going to, either do operations or sales, and I have the business experience. So I feel very confident with the marketing and the sales and the operations, and I love the industry. So it's something that I'm entertaining right now. And that's why I'm interested in that. Yeah, because I think, a lot of people look at it like, oh, well, you don't have any industry experience. Well, you don't need it. That's what people don't understand. If you know how to put the right people in place, you know how to team up with the right experienced people, and you know how to manage people, you can get into any industry. You really can. I feel that way. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I didn't before, right? So any business I've owned, I could always fire somebody and go do it myself, right?
Yep.
And so I bought a heating and air company, and I couldn't fix an air conditioner, and it was really a scary time in my life. But I was able to do it successfully, and I thought mine was kind of a fluke. But now with all the companies that I've sold, I see people that operate at such an incredible level. I mean, they're building 20, 30, $50 million companies, and they can't fix an air conditioner.
Yep.
I see it in roofing. Roofing has become very attractive, which I'm sure you're aware of.
Yep.
Private equity has really been making a push in that industry lately. I see a lot of people I know who did very, very well in heating and air and plumbing, and now because of non-competes, they
Yep.
can't get back in, and so they've gone to roofing. And I really believe that, and I have a lot of sellers that they're concerned, right? They're going to sell their business, and the buyer that comes to the table doesn't have trades experience. Like, well, I don't want to sell to them. They can't fix an air conditioner. They can't run the company. And often for them, I'm asking them, when's the last time you were in a van and fixed an air conditioner?
Yep.
Oh, it's been years. Well, why do you think they need to be able to do it? And so I understand people's apprehension, but I've seen it happen over and over, and I'm absolutely a believer at this point.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree. And yeah, that's exactly the reason why I'm looking at roofing. I have a non-compete, so I can't get back into the tank business. And, I want to dabble into a different industry that I feel like I can bring a lot of value to. It's not as complicated as the environmental industry, and there's no permits, no inspections, no DEP reporting. So it's a simpler operations as far as day to day, sales, marketing, fulfillment, and that's basically the entire business. So I'm excited about it. But yeah, as far as let's talk about brand. I mean, how important is it for you? I mean, are you seeing, is this something that's big with the buyers? I mean, does that really help with the multiple as well? If you have a company, let's say, that really doesn't have a brand, maybe they don't have really a big online presence, but they have like a referral, maybe they had all the leads are from referral because maybe the guy's been doing it for 30 years and he's got all these referral partners that he's built over. Like I just talked to a company last week, they're 5.5 million top line doing zero marketing. I mean, isn't that a business that can be sometimes hard to sell to? Because it's like, well, if the owner leaves, now he has all these connections with these referral partners. That could be a potential risk, right?
Yeah. And so part of it goes back to who the buyer is, and what they see from a value standpoint. You're right. I sell a lot of companies that spend zero on marketing. The phone just rings, and many of them, the phone rings more than they can get to, right?
Wow.
They're turning business down. And the first time I heard that, I thought, yeah, you're just saying.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, it makes my eyes roll back in the back of my head thinking, what? You're telling people you can't get to them?
Yeah.
I see that a lot. I'm shocked at how much I see that. So that's very real. And I think some buyers look at it and think, wow, what an incredible opportunity. They're doing $2 million, $3 million, $4 million in sales, and they're spending nothing on marketing. What's going to happen now when we start actually marketing and trying to grow the business? So I think some of them see it as an opportunity. Where I see the risk from a buyer's perspective is when the company is under $1 million in sales. Typically, a company under $1 million in sales, the owner's still in the field, right? Yeah. They're running calls, and so that relationship is there. But once they get above $1.2 million, $1.3 million, typically they're not in the field because they can't be, right? They've got other stuff they've got to manage, and now they've got people out there. So although some of the clients or customers may still know them, it's not them going to their house. They don't have their cell phone number. They're not calling them on Friday night and asking them to come over. So that risk has been minimized from that level. But on a smaller company, risk is very real. But one of the, and I mentioned a minute ago, one of the first places a buyer is going to go to, they're going to go look online, right? As soon as they find out the company name from me, they're going to look online and see, what do the Google reviews say? Are there any? I've sold a lot of commercial companies that don't have any Google reviews. They don't even have a website.
Yeah, they don't need it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's not their business plan. And so, so it really depends on who the business is, and then back to who the buyer is and what they're looking at. I have some buyers who know nothing about heating and air, but they're, marketing experts. And so they look at that and think, wow, I can come in here and turn some marketing on and it can blow this thing up. I have others that think, hey, I'm buying that brand and that reputation, and I want that strong brand and reputation to be there. I've got no interest in the business.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I think I see that as absolutely a huge opportunity if you know what you're doing. That's kind of, the things that I look for. It's like I said, I started a company last week, 5.5 million, no marketing. I was like, poof, mind blown. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, that's an amazing amount of revenue to be able to do. I guess in the roofing industry, because its average ticket is high, it's not like a huge business, but with the fact that it's doing no marketing, I mean, I didn't know that existed, to be honest. I mean, I'm like, this is crazy. I mean, everybody I talk to has some marketing.
On project-based work, that's different, right? So if I'm buying a company that does projects, right, one time with roofing, a lot of roofing is you're not coming back and servicing them, right? You're not putting a maintenance agreement in there. And so that referral network, it could be huge, and there is a risk there, right? Yeah. Because if they have other contractors or other people in the community that are referring them all that business, and now that owner's gone, and that referral source potentially could be gone, that would make me nervous. On heating and air, specifically if it's residential service repair replacement, it's a volume kind of thing, and then it would be. But I've sold a lot of heating and air companies that focus on project-based work, do construction. Typically, it's more on the commercial side, where they're getting referred business from places. Maintaining those referral sources is huge, and they'll normally structure an earn-out of sorts in their purchase. They're not going to give you all cash up front because they're going to want to make sure 12 months from now those referrals are still coming in. And if they're not, they don't want to pay for it. So it's going to depend on the breakdown of the business, commercial versus residential. But like you're talking about with roofing, it's a one and done kind of thing typically, or one and done every 10 or 15 years kind of thing. So that there's a risk that's associated with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned maintenance contracts. So in the HVAC business, I mean, what are you seeing as far as are most HVAC companies, do they have a maintenance program, or just some of them do? Like what are you seeing there? Because I know when that comes to valuation as well, that could increase the value if you have a decent amount of maintenance recurring revenue, right? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, what we see is all across the board. I have some, I'm going to call them older guys, who don't believe in maintenance agreements, right? Yeah. Why am I going to pay a technician to go over there and run a maintenance, and we're going to make, we're going to bill $80 on it or $100 on it, when they could be running a demand call that's $500 minimum. So they don't even believe in them. And I'll have a lot of them that'll say, do you have maintenance agreements? Oh yeah, we do a ton of maintenance agreements. Okay, how many do you have? Well, they don't prepay. They just call us when they want it service kind of thing. Yeah. So then I have some that have several thousand maintenance agreements. So it's all across the board. I can tell you a buyer loves maintenance agreements.
Yes.
For all sorts of different reasons. But one, the customer's paying for their own loyalty, right? Yeah. If they're paying you $200 a year to come twice a year, if something breaks, they're calling you. They've already paid you $200. So if nothing else, they're going to call you. And so it generates that repeat business, keeps the guys busy. In the shoulder season, there's all sorts of reasons why maintenance agreements are good, but more is always better when it comes to selling. I can tell you, if we have a company that has a high count of maintenance agreement, in my ad, the first sentence is going to be 1,500 maintenance agreements or 1,000 maintenance agreements or 2,000 maintenance agreements. That I'm going to lead with that because I know it's going to drive traffic to that listings because buyers love maintenance agreements. Also, if you're doing a ton of maintenance agreements and don't have to do that marketing, back to the marketing you're talking about, a company that's growing, we typically is going to spend somewhere 6 to 8% in marketing. Well, if you're doing $2 million a year and you're not having to spend any money on marketing, you're way more profitable, right? You could potentially be adding 10% to the bottom line. And so your numbers look a lot better. So in that standpoint, it's a win all the way around. So maintenance agreements I'm a huge fan from an owner's perspective and especially from a broker's perspective. One of the first questions we ask a seller, how many maintenance agreements do you have in place? And if they say, oh, we've got 50, well, they don't have a maintenance system, right? They don't have maintenance agreements in place. They got 2,000. Well, then that's something a buyer's going to love.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're making the customers sticky, right?
Yeah.
They're stuck to you. So if they have an issue, you've been maintaining their system. If something goes wrong with that system, eventually they're going to hopefully use you to replace it. That's the whole goal, right? And then that recurring revenue is coming in. So yeah, it's not a huge. I'm assuming it's not a huge profit driver, right? Because it's like you said, $200 a year. If the guy's going out there, he's spending an hour or so, but it's just getting that customer to be loyal to you. Like you said, they're paying for loyalty, right?
Yeah, and the real money, and that's non-industry buyers will call me and say, well, how much money is the maintenance program generating? And my answer is always minimal, nothing.
Yeah.
If you look at what the maintenance agreement cost is or price is, but what is being in your customer's home twice a year? What about
Yep.
the indoor air quality? What about upsells? What about finding things before they actually break and they love you for that? There's all these other things in there that generate to way more money. I can tell you a company that has 1,000 maintenance agreements, 99% of the time makes more money than a company that has none.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like you said, even the marketing aspect of it, if they don't have to market, as much, or not at all, I mean, they're going to be making more to the bottom line. So yeah, that's important. I mean, I think you guys, if you're running an HVAC business, you're not doing maintenance agreements. I think it's something you should study and look into because that's one thing I actually try to instill a recurring revenue model in my last business. And it was more of like an insurance product where I would go out there and I would test the oil tanks that were underground. I would do a soil boring and then I would try to sell like a $60 a month plan. And I couldn't get really lift with it because, a lot of homeowners are removing their oil tanks. They don't want to keep the oil in the ground. And the ones that did were tied in with the oil providers, and the oil providers didn't want to promote that product because they're like, oh, you don't have an insurance company backing you up. You're just backing it up by your business. So it was really difficult to get any kind of like big time insurance company to back, an environmental insurance, so that didn't play out. But I looked into that because recurring revenue can help increase the value of your business if you have that for sure.
Yeah, and I see it happening. I see plumbing companies doing it. I see electrical companies doing it. I've sold several generator companies
Yep.
and who install generators are putting maintenance plans in place. It's stickiness, right? And they're paying for their own stickiness. And when it comes time to sell, really running the business, you should want to have it. I mean, as the owner, not just when you want to sell, but buyers love it on that. So it magnifies itself out.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about, you brought up like earnouts, and let's talk about the structure of a sale, right? So what are you typically seeing? What's ideal? I know that there's so many different ways you could structure a business, but I know I have, some clients that I speak to, they're like, oh, I have this certain amount of money I need to get for the business. I'm like, listen, you might get someone to offer you that, but they're going to give you a horrible structure, the way they're going to structure that deal, where you probably won't see the money anyways. So can you talk a little bit about how, what's ideal on a deal structure? I mean, is it best to get all cash? Is it best to get an earnout? Is it best to have a seller note? I mean, what are you typically seeing when you're selling these businesses?
Yeah, so I'll make people mad on this one, I'm certain. My preference is all cash, right?
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Typically there may be an indemnification holdback just to make sure you're not lying and cheating to them. So they need to have a little bit of money in escrow to protect themselves in case you were a liar or cheater and they didn't catch something. But my preference with all deals is 100% cash.
When you say cash, just to clarify for everybody, you're not saying like they're coming with a check. It's like SBA finance and you're going to get the money up front as a seller, right? So let's just clarify that.
Closing, when you hand them the keys to the business, you're having the money for what your sale price is wired to your bank account.
100%. I agree. So,
and I see with the private equity influence in the space over the last few years, all this creative stuff. And here's the reality. Once you sell it, you lose control of the performance of the business. And I understand a buyer is going to say, hey, I want it to be an earnout for all these different reasons, but you've lost control. And so my belief is, biased as it is, you should get paid today for what you've built up until today. If they're concerned about future growth and what it's going to do, then they could tie it into some sort of bonus structure if the business grows, if you're going to stick around. Most of my sellers don't stick around. Most of my sellers leave 30 to 60 days. They're gone. They're done. And so to have your retirement tied into how well some complete stranger runs the business after you've left, and you give them money motivation through an earnout, that if they aren't real successful, they don't have to pay you. It opens up a Pandora's box that I wouldn't want to be part of. Just to me. I want to know what I'm saying yes or no to, and that check at closing is what I'm saying yes or no to. So that's 100% my preference. Now, there's a lot of brokers in the industry who do very well, and I've been at the same events they are, and they stand on stage saying you need to do an earnout. I just don't agree. Now, that being said, are there people who have sold their business and rolled equity or left an earnout and made a lot more money? Absolutely, there is. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen.
Yep.
They preach the second bite of the apple, right? You're going to roll equity, and when they sell, you're going to get paid. That is 100% true. It's a possibility, but it's also a possibility for that to be zero.
Yep.
And so I tell people, you need to make sure you're okay that the first check you get is the last check. So if you don't get any other checks, you think it was a great deal, then fantastic, take it. But if you're betting your retirement on what they do 3 years from now,
yep,
that's a huge risk, in my opinion, and I don't believe in taking it.
No, I 100% agree. And I mean, I think obviously every situation is unique, right? So like you said, I mean, if it's a PE company coming in, you're at that level where you got, 2 million in EBITDA and you got a PE guy looking at your business and they have a track record of taking these companies and growing them and exiting again in 3 to 5 years. Okay. You might want to take a shot. You're basically investing. So if you're rolling 10, 20% equity, you're saying I'm investing into your idea and your capabilities of taking this to the next level. But yeah, if it's some guy off the street who's got no industry experience, is like, yeah, I want to buy an HVAC company and I'm going to figure this out. You might not want to take an earnout, in that situation. Because that could be risky.
I've seen a lot of people, thank goodness none have been through my clients, but I've seen a lot of people that have sold businesses and they have an earnout tied to net income. Well,
yeah. What does that mean? What does net income to you mean? Yes.
Absolutely. And the buyer is typically paying themselves bonuses and a management fee, and there's all this money that comes out of it, and you can't control any of it.
Nope.
And if they don't make that money, they don't have to pay you. Yep. So it's in their best interest not to have to pay you. So it doesn't align everybody on the same page. And so I'm just not a fan. But once again, I'm gonna make a lot of enemies in saying that. But I just think there is scenarios for some people that an earnout or rolling equity or do these things can make sense. Once again, the bulk of my people are not going to be around. Yep. So if you're still there running it, you're doing everything, and you want to invest, it's like buying stock in the stock market. If it does very well, fantastic, you can make money. And if it goes to zero, yours can go to zero. And I think a lot of people don't understand the downside of that. Recent news, obviously, a consolidator filed bankruptcy, and there was a lot of people who rolled equity in that scenario. And those people's rolled equity went to nothing, went to zero. And I wouldn't want to have that conversation with somebody whose business I sold to them.
Yeah. No, it's tough. It's tough because, you want to sell the business, but you also want to do the right thing by your clients, and give them the right advice. And I think you're on the right page for sure with that. I mean, I agree 100%. I have a seller note that I'm not super fond about that I've been dealing with. And if I had to do it over again, I would do it 100% differently. I mean, it was the first time I went through it. So now that I'm dealing with it, and now I'm advising other people that are going through it. And I'm like, nope. I had one client who's like, I'm going to do 100% seller note on this. I'm like, no. I'm like, are you crazy? I was like, that is absolutely not something you want to do. Like, you think you're going to be out of this because you don't want to deal with the aggravation anymore? I'm like, you're going to, and especially the way the business was set up. I mean, it wasn't super profitable, and the operator who was going to be taking it over he was already in the business, and he's like, we just wasn't operating it correctly. And I'm like, I just want to take this chance. Like, if he doesn't have the money, he's going to call you, I don't have it this month. And then you're going to be dealing with that. You know what I mean? Like, and where do you turn? You have no one, like, you're going to repossess the business. What are you going to do?
And that's what I was going to say. That's the only option. Your only recourse is to get a business back that you didn't want to begin with.
Yep.
That's now probably not doing well, right? Yep. If it was making tons of money, they'd be paying you. And if they're not paying you, that means because they're not making money, and they've probably lost customers, and they've probably lost employees, and they probably haven't been changing the oil on the van, and they probably haven't been doing all these things. Yep. So what do you get back? The blessing and the curse of the trades, in my opinion, is you can generate a lot of revenue with very little assets, right? So heating and air company, doing $3 million or $2 million a year in sale, you probably have 6 or 7 vans. So you probably have a couple $100,000 of assets. Aside from that, you've got nothing. Yep. So you go to take the business back, you get some used vans.
Yeah. There's no assets really. Yeah.
It's not like you can go back and there's millions of dollars in real estate that was what you sold. It was goodwill, which is why SBA is typically the only way to get it financed. And if the buyer's decent, SBA will finance that. Yep. So why take the risk? Let the bank take the risk and get paid. And obviously the buyer says, well, You need to finance it. We're going to save you all this money on taxes. Well, $0 is still $0. If you don't get paid, you don't have to worry about taxes. You don't have to worry about anything. And for most people, once again, it's the biggest sale of their life. It's what they bet their retirement on. And to take a risk on that is, I don't know, I wouldn't do it. And that's what I tell people. I say, listen, you can do it, and the potential for an upside is there. Are you okay if that's zero?
Yep.
No, I'm not. Okay, then don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. In my opinion, you're staying married to that business. If you got a seller note, you're still, even though you're not involved in the day to day, you're still married to the business on how it operates and how efficient it's being run. And you're still thinking about it. And you're like, oh shit, am I getting my money? Like, I don't know. It's not something I would recommend now, especially that I've gone through it. But what are you typically seeing in the industry for the private equity? Are they coming for guys that are doing $500,000 in profit? Is it $1 million? Like, what are you typically seeing where they're getting interested in your industry?
So really, it's moved downhill, right? When I first became a broker and private equity started getting involved, it had to be $1 million in EBITDA. If they would call me, do you have anything $1 million in EBITDA? Nope. And they weren't interested. Move on. And then they started gobbling up all these companies. Well, now all the big guys have been bought, or a lot of the big guys have been bought. So these private equity are in a market. They're willing to go downstream. I mean, I've sold some of the biggest players in the industry, companies doing $1 million in sales, much less EBITDA. Now the preference is bigger, and the bigger you are, the more it opens you up to, right? Because there's a few buyers who have dominated markets where they're willing to backfill in an area they're already in, so they'll buy smaller companies because they already have an office, they already have staff, they already have everything. They're just getting the people, they're getting the butts in the trucks, and they're getting the customers. Where if you're a bigger company, now you're open to a lot bigger of a buyer base. So that makes sense. But yeah, I've sold a lot of small companies to a lot of big buyers.
Yeah, I mean it's so hot right now in home services. These private equity companies. I mean, I've seen that as well, where they're and when I was selling back in 2021, I was entertaining it. It wasn't even as crazy it is now. I mean, and especially in my industry I was in, that was so niche. There wasn't really any private equity. Like they weren't really looking for it. I mean. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm very interested in the roofing industry because they're so hot on it right now. And if you can get it to a certain level, they're paying crazy multiples. Who knows how long it'll last? If this is going to go on for the next couple of years. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you see this cooling off at some point? Is this are we in this market where it's just crazy and it's going to cool off? And from your experience, what you've seen over the years, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so let's talk different heating and air and plumbing and then roofing different. So we've already seen some cooling off in heating and air and plumbing, right? They aren't paying as crazy of multiples as they were paying, say, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So we're seeing some of that happen now already. I think there'll always be money in it, right? I think it's an attractive industry. It's an attractive business. And I think you'll always be able to get a decent dollar figure. I think roofing is where heating and air was 4 or 5 years ago. I think there's a lot of upside still in roofing. That'll be there for another few years, I think. Yeah. Once again, my crystal ball works as well as yours does.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know how accurate I am in the timeline. We're seeing slowdown in heating and air and plumbing and electric, and we're seeing ramp up still in roofing, and I think that'll continue for the next few years. At the end of the day, private equity is a 3 to 5 year window, typically, most of their time frames. So that's what drove the prices up in home services, and that's what's driving them up in roofing. And they all have an exit plan to give their investors back their money. And so that's typically a 3 to 5 year window. So when that runs out, they'll be chasing the next hot thing. But I think they'll always be attractive, but maybe they won't always be paying the ridiculous multiples that we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah. And what do you say that's from? I mean, I know a lot of guys say, oh, it's from 2020 when they saw that they were essential. Home services was an essential industry, right? They didn't shut the home service industry down. As a matter of fact, I mean, we took off like crazy. I mean, there's a little bit of a lull when it first hit, COVID hit, and then it was like off to the races. So I'm assuming that's how it was in the rest of the industries as well. And I think that's maybe why they got so hot on the home service industry. But what's your take on that?
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, it was already warming up, right? I mean, it was already on the radar, and that I think drove the point home. Yeah. And to me in private equity, everybody follows one another, right? So they knew somebody else who was in the trade, so then they got in the trade, and then they knew somebody who was in the trade, and so I think everything else, restaurants, gyms, all these other things were shut down and making zero money, and heating and air, plumbing, electrical guys were wide open and making more money than they ever had. So I think it was the perfect storm, right? At the end of the day, I think it was good market timing, had record low interest rates, money was cheap. Investors were looking for places to put money because they couldn't put it in these other places that they historically had been. So I think it was just a perfect storm of all things. And the industry was fragmented, right? Most people, you couldn't ask them to name 2 heating and air companies in their town, much less in the country.
Yep.
And so, it was just every little town had their own little market dominators, if there even was one. And so it was just ripe for the picking, and it was the perfect storm.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I think we got a couple more years on this run here, and who knows, we'll see where things go from there. But yeah, it's an attractive space because, there's a lot of guys in the space. Like you said, it's fragmented, right? So I think that's one of the things they look for. And that's what I've noticed just in the roofing space. I mean, these guys, it seems like they probably grew up on the roofs. They've been doing roofs forever, but they're not really keen on the marketing and the operations and the sales and really on the growth aspect of things. And I think that's where the opportunity lies. And that's kind of why I'm interested in it. But yeah, I'm excited to see kind of where it goes. So what would you say? I mean, for you, what do you think your goal is for the brokerage? I mean, you're going to continue to scale and go after these HVAC companies and plumbing companies. Is that kind of like your main niche that you're going to continue to go after?
Yeah, I think we're going to stay in our lane. I think from a broker's perspective, if you cover too many things, you can't add value, right? I think part of what has made us successful is, one, we've been in the business, but by doing so many companies, we know what to look for in deals, and we know what buyers are looking for, and we've got a lot of buyer connections. And so being very specific, I think, allows us to be very good, specifically at just what we do. And I think if we were to diversify too much, we couldn't add value.
Yep.
So my youngest son, my oldest son bought my heating and air company. Him and his wife run it today. My youngest son works with me here in the brokerage, and he has all through college. He played college baseball and couldn't work full time and go to school and play baseball, and so he kind of worked behind the scenes for me in the business. And then when he graduated, he came on full time, and so now we're growing the business. But yeah, staying in our lane. And that, ask me 10 years from now, that could change, but certainly for the foreseeable future, our plan is to stay right where we are and work with the people we're working with.
I think it's smart. I mean, I do. I think it's really smart to niche down. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, because again, what I've seen a lot of brokerages is, and I hate to say it, but it's like a lot of the brokerages that you deal with around my area anyways, I feel like they're, I want to say, it's an easy thing to get into, right? I think you need a real estate license in New Jersey. So the barrier of entry is not difficult. And then they just like take whatever they can get. Doesn't matter what type of business, as long as someone says, yes, I want to sell my business, and they're just throwing it on biz buy sell. And they're like, I'm a broker, right? And then they don't answer the calls. You can't get any decent documents out of them. I'm like, this is a broken process, right? I mean, are you seeing that same thing? So I think it's very smart to niche down and become the expert in one industry.
Yeah. I'm active in the brokerage community, and unfortunately as a whole, there's a lot of people that need help, that I think, similar to real estate, if you look at a market, there's probably 10% or less of the realtors there do all the work, and everybody else is just a realtor, and it's kind of a part-time hobby. And business brokerage is the same way. Unfortunately, you're right. I think only 16 states even require a license. So the rest of the country, you don't even have to have a license to do anything. You just say, I'm a business broker, I'm going to sell a business. And so I'm active. I'm in Florida. I'm on the state board for business brokers of Florida. We really focus education and what you have to do and what you have to learn. And we require you to take classes before you can even become a member. IBBA, the International Business Brokerage Association, does a great job in trying to educate people and communicate. But it's like anything else. You've got to go to class, right? You've got to go do it in order to get better. And so I think there's a lot of people that need to get better in the industry, unfortunately. And I work with them. I'll co-broke with other brokers, and I'll have brokers come to me and say, hey, I've got a buyer for your listing. Great. Tell me about them. I don't know anything about them. What do you mean? Do they have money? Well, they said they do, but
Oh boy.
aren't we going to make sure they've got some money before we start giving them information? Have you had them sign an NDA yet, a non-disclosure agreement? Oh, not yet.
Oh boy.
Okay, so just give them to me. I'll take them over and I'll pay you something for bringing them to the table, because we're not just going to give out information to broke people who potentially could be a competitor or could be something else.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah.
So we have a strict process in my office that we go to before we even give away information. And then we're there to hold everybody's hand right through the process. Because once again, most sellers have never sold and they don't know what to expect. And with the buyers entering the marketplace, there's a lot of buyers who've never bought. Yeah. And so they don't know what to do either. And we try to keep that process going through. And we've got a system of marketing. I think you're 100% accurate. Most brokers go to biz by sell, put it up there and don't. We've got a 7-step process that we're going to do a direct mail campaign. We're going to do email blasts. We're going to social media. We're going to put it on our website. We're going to put it on other people's websites. We have a system that we go through, because I want all the eyes on your business that I can get, right?
Of
the
course.
more people that are looking, the better chance we are to get a market price. And so we do that systematically, intentionally, because I don't get paid if the business doesn't sell. There's a lot of brokers out there that charge a retainer. That's another class that I can go through on my feelings on that. Yep. But I believe I should eat my own cooking. If we agree on a price, because there's brokers that'll come to you and you'll say, hey, I want $5 million for the business, and I'll stick it out there for $5 million, and then it never sells. Yep. Or somebody will start making offers at $2 million where it should be priced, and they try to convince you to lower your price. So we agree to a price, and it doesn't cost you a penny if we don't sell it there. And so if I don't believe I can get you the price we're talking about, I'm going to tell you, hey, Teddy, I'm not your guy. I get you what you're looking for. Find another broker who potentially can, because I want to sell the business and I want to get paid at the end of the day.
Of course.
And I'm going to spend a lot of money on marketing and advertising and direct mail campaigns and email campaigns and all these things we're going to do. I'm out a lot of money on every listing, and I don't want to be out a lot of money unless I know that I'm fairly confident that I'm going to get paid back. And the only way I'm going to get paid back is to sell it. So we eat our own cooking. I joke with clients when I meet with them. You know, when you go to fix someone's air conditioner, you don't say, hey, give me $50, and then when I fix it, you're going to give me the rest. You're going to say, hey, when I fix it, here's the cost. And when I fix it, I get paid. And if I don't fix it, I don't get paid. And it's the same thing with us. And we believe in that aligning with our clients. So we all are marching towards the same goal.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to wrap it up here, I mean, who's your ideal client? I mean, if you had to say, is it a revenue size? Is it a profit size? I mean, who's your ideal client?
Good people first. I mean, it comes down to dollars and cents, right? Yep. But I want people that I get along with.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I love what I do, and I love to come to work. And that's because we're selective on who we work with. As far as I don't want to work with jerks. I don't want to work with people that I don't trust. Because at the end of the day, the buyer who's buying them is taking a huge risk with their life savings as well.
Yep.
So I don't want people to come back and say, hey, the business you sold me, they were liars, cheats, crooks. They didn't do what they said. Yep. I want it to be, it's a marriage, right? I believe a business sale is a marriage, not a divorce, and everybody needs to kind of get along. I prefer companies doing $1 million, $1.5 million in sales and above. Typically, that means the owner's out of the van. Probably 90% of what we do is between $2 million in sales and $6 million in sales. Okay. I'll do a few every year over $10 million in sales, probably 3 or 4 every year over $10 million in sales. But my sweet spot is kind of that $3 million range.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Patrick. This has been a great conversation. And what's the best way for listeners to get in contact with you? If they have a business that they're interested in selling, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first up, on my website, we talked about valuation earlier. If they go to my website, businessmodificationgroup.com, on the front page, we have a click and get a valuation done in your business. And so it's ballpark value, so they can at least have an idea of what it's worth. And then if it's in the range of what they want, we'll do a full valuation for no charge. They can call us 850-669-2498. I'm active on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. I've got a YouTube channel. If they just Google search me, Business Modification Group and Patrick Lang, it'll come up with all the ways to get in touch with us and reach out any way they can.
All right. Awesome, Patrick. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I look forward to staying in contact with you and checking out your journey. And hopefully we'll do this again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I had a great time, and I'd love to come back.
All right. Thanks again, Patrick.